Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the conclusions. And my conclusions have been posted in a poor timing. Not getting enough views, and I decided to post earlier. So yeah, I sacrificed some sleep to adjust my sleeping timing, so to make sure I can post things earlier. So press the like button if you support my effort. I choke. The CIA did it. So anyway, it must be the Russians. Anyway, the old part. So for those that do not know, because I see that the views is still pretty low for the conclusion segment. So conclusions is basically more towards analysis and opinions. Of my opinions and analysis of the situation in Ukraine. So it's less a reporting base. So the SITREP is pure reporting base. It's very report facts centric, no reporting centric. So this one is all opinion, all speculations, all analysis based on the information that we have reported on the Frontline Changes report and the SITREP. So let's start. I spent 1 minute on the intro. You see, this is the best segment ever. So there's nothing much over the Kherson front. Zaporizhzhia front continue to be a pretty much of a mystery. So nothing really much to talk about. And of course, we have to talk about this area here, the Vuhledar line. So the as mentioned in the previous conclusions, things is of course developing as per expected. And the Russian forces has now of course closed up this salient here north of Novosilka. And this is of course predictable because this is undefendable for the Ukrainians. You can see this kind of salience. If the Russians have taken Chasiv in an attack like this, Ukrainians can't possibly hold this position like this. They are just waiting to be encircled. So as per expected, the Ukrainians have withdrawn from towards Zolotaneva, and the Russians have basically closed up the gap. And this is of course the most significant thing. And the understanding is that the Russians are already pushing towards Zolotaneva, despite there is actually no reports talking about the Russians attacking Zolotaneva. The fighting is pretty much talking about Preshestivka. What we do have is, however, is the geolocation of the Ukrainian forces retreating away from Zolotaneva. And in fact, this seems to be a very rushed retreat. They are running from on foot as far as I can remember, and they are running northward towards Chasiv. And the problem with Chasiv is that immediately they got airstrike as well. So these guys are not catching a break. They are running away from a potential doomsday, and then immediately crash into yet another doomsday situation. I am suspecting that the Zolotaneva is going to fall pretty quickly, due to the fact that I think the Ukrainians are running away from Zolotaneva due to the strategic situation around here. However, what the soldiers on the ground, while they are trying to save their life, is not considering is that this absolutely hammers the Ukrainian strategic posture here. They are allowing the Russians to now link up the highway all the way from Mikhailsky to Zolotaneva, and this will greatly improve the Russians' logistical situation around here. The entire communication in military terms is actually more like not just talking, but also by like supplying reinforcement, route of communications. So improving the communications between the various units and reinforcement, resupply, everything will be so much more easier. And the Russians is likely to continue to expand the buffer zone around here. This is what I believe that they're going to do. They'll capture Zolotaneva, and then they're going to have a very strong position. With the fall of Zolotaneva, they can actually push westward and collapse the entire region here. Then the Russians can easily take the entire north of Uruzhaine easily. So and then the Ukrainians will find themselves suddenly defending Velyka and Novosilka. It's going to be quite a disaster. And you can see that the entrenchment seems to be concentrating around Velyka and Novosilka, and there is not as much over at Chasiv region. So I don't think I think the situation is just rather bad. And the Ukrainians is now going to stuck with pretty complicated communication routes around here. and they have nothing to going towards. They probably have something going towards Vodian, but nothing much going towards Vuhledar. And so this situation is just making, it's just giving Russians a lot of advantage. And I think this is what I mean by, the soldiers are not realizing that by retreating from Toretsk and Kostiantynivka and not fighting to their death, they are giving Russians a lot more advantage, and which will cause more suffering for themselves. So the pincer is not going to be so quickly. We're not going to see it very quickly because there will be the Vodiane have to fall first, and then we have to see an attack towards Novosilka. So this is going to unfold for months. I think 2-3 months would not so quickly. So don't expect this big arrow movement, this pincer around Vuhledar to unfold very quickly. However, while this is unfolding, the Ukrainians may just bolt from Vuhledar, and this will be, will collapse the entire situation much faster. But if the Ukrainians do not dare to hold Vuhledar anymore. Other sectors on not the usual stuff. Pokrovsk front, as mentioned in the situation report, has pretty much grind to a halt. There is no more frontline changes around this sector at this moment. The Ukrainians are previously understood to be counter-attacking. They are reinforcing the line, so that's good for the Ukrainian side. At least drag this on, because if Pokrovsk falls, then it will be a worse situation than the Vuhledar debacle. The Pokrovsk is way more important, strategically speaking. So the Ukrainians have to hold this line, and they must hold this line if they still want to fight this war. Without Pokrovsk, the battle for the Donetsk Oblast will be half lost. So this is going to be pretty serious. Russians, on the other hand, some say, of course, as mentioned previously, some say that they are tired, but I don't think that's the case. They do rotations. I think it's just a matter of regrouping. Previous forward positions, they need to move up front. I'm not even sure where they would put it. Maybe Zelany. I think Zelany would be a good forward operating position for the Russians. And then the immediate forward position would be at Novosilka. And so this would be pretty decent in terms of as a forward operating base. So from this area, they can actually strike in multiple directions. And so this is actually pretty useful. Zelany and Serhievka region. So yeah, then the Ukrainians have this position. They will be fighting, in this area. So it looks like a computer game right now. So let's see how this develop. The battle of Pokrovsk is not going to end as soon as we thought. So because of this halt, but it's expected in the sense that the Russians always slow down. They always stop when you think that they're going to move. So let's wait and see. Surprisingly, New York is still in play, and the Ukrainians have been geolocated to have counterattack into the western part of New York. Although the situation is rather unclear, we will need more information. So the Ukrainian mapping have not changed at all. Fighting is still reported at Nelipivka, and which means Nelipivka still have not fall. So as I mentioned just only, that the Russians tend to stop when you think that they should be moving. So we will just have to wait and see how this goes, see what kind of games that the Russians are playing. And then we have this big news, the geolocation of Russian forces west of Klishchiivka. So this, as I mentioned in the Sibra, could be a sign that the Russians have taken the entirety of the canal. That is a possibility, which we then can explain. Let me move this here a bit. Which we then can explain the fighting reported towards Stupovsky, towards Proteshny, towards Bilahora, towards Dilievka. If this is the case, this is the reality, then we can explain all these attacks, because we have so much reports about fighting at Proteshny. Like the last one was on the 3rd of September, 2nd and 3rd of September. At Stupovsky, the last one was 2nd of September. And we have already attacks fighting reported in this area from the 24th, particularly from the 28th to the 30th. So Proteshny we have from the 24th and then 30th. So the situation here looks really weird. Why is the Russian forces geolocated this far up front? This is way too far up front. It's around 2.5 kilometers. It's too far away from the front line, and it's very, very weird. We have to take note of this, but it's not up to me. It depends on the sources whether they will reveal more information. So We just have to continue to wait. But if this is the reality, of course, the entire strategic situation changes. And then, yeah. But if that happened, I still think that the Russians will hold the line at the canal. I don't think they will push forward, because pushing forward means fighting near Kostiantynivka, and that will be bad for the Russians, because this is a massive forward base. This is the HQ for the Ukrainians. So at this front, Ukrainians would have to attack a much bigger distance. They have to go from the city all the way to 10 kilometers, 9 to 10 kilometers, sometimes even 15 kilometers to reach the front line. If you push a front line too close to Kostiantynivka, let's say you push it to here, then the Ukrainians can react very quickly, 5-6 kilometers, but then the Russians will have to run a very far distance from Bakhmut, 11-12 kilometers. So it's also a game of logistics. If the more you try to push forward, the shorter the front line for the Ukrainians. You don't really want that if you are Russian, unless you have a lot of confidence that you can hold up the logistics and create that massive heavy punch and create a foothold within the city itself. Without that, then of course you're fighting an uphill battle. Then it's going to be very, very complicated. Chasiv Yar, as I mentioned, it doesn't make sense to attack Chasiv Yar tentatively. Other than this small little incursion, we still do not have an offensive towards Chasiv Yar. And Zelensky continued to be flirted. We still have this flirting of Zelensky. We still do not know what the hell is happening. Nothing is still. It's not progressing over here, despite that I thought that this is the best option for the Russians to collapse the Siversk front. But again, it's the same situation with the logistic game. Having the Siversk front active means that the Ukrainians have to travel a long distance to hold up the front line. So this long traveling is just going to burn the Ukrainian logistics, the fuel, the energy, and then of course yet another front line to defend. And Siversk front is the furthest front line the Ukrainians have to resupply and reinforce. So it does make sense, if you think on a very strategic sense, that the Russians do not want to collapse the Siversk front. So, but then the situation right here is also that the Russians did indeed move forward with the claim of the capture of Ivano-Darivka and Vymka. So we do not know what the hell is happening. Maybe the Ukrainians is not biting these baits enough, and they want to put more pressure on the Ukrainians so that the Ukrainians send more forces into the Siversk region, and then so that they can be attritioned away, they can waste the logistics. That is also something to consider. Further up north, around the Oskil's front, there's nothing much really happening. A lot of the fighting, but there's no updates, no information to really talk about. It's just fighting along all the different fronts, which I did mention before. One target is Oskil, coming from this Krakivka direction. The other one is towards the crossing over at Krylyakivka Sonkove from the Pischane front. So this is of course still ongoing. And but there's no more developments being reported over at Pischane front. So very, very awkward situation. And these salients clearly don't make a lot of sense to be able to hold for this long. The Russians clearly should be closing this from Stemnikivka and the south of Pischane. However, this still have not happened yet. So we just have to continue to wait for more information. Fighting is reported within the Sinkivka region in the forest because of this geolocation of the Ukrainian forces using the termite munition drone. So they use the drone to drop fireworks, or fire or termite onto Russian entrenched positions, and it remains to be seen how effective such thing is. Of course, I think what it can do is destroying ammo dumps. So if you have any weaponry or ammunition dumps, if the termite hit it, then it will be destroyed. It will be spoiled. And of course, the fire and the smoke will create incentive for the Russians to evacuate from the position, because smoke. You want to breathe fresh air, right? So but no, so far the drone footages of the Ukrainians using such weaponry I haven't seen any soldiers running away from the tree lines or whatnot. So So the effectiveness remains to be seen. And I believe that it could be easily, deterred by just wearing a gas mask. So let's see how this goes. Nothing really happening much in the Kharkiv front. The situation at the Kursk front seems to deteriorate a bit. Based on the Russian information, Russian forces continue to be able to use pontoon crossing to evacuate civilians and supply their Russian troops. So the last pontoon crossing that was reported is over near Zvetnoye. I believe they are definitely going to re-establish the one east of Grushkovo, probably another one over in the Karisk region, and the Russians are sending reinforcement and they are strengthening the positions around the Grushkovo region. And this is going to be really bad for the Ukrainians, because the more the Russians put in more forces into this region, which clearly at the beginning wasn't there, the more this pincer movement on Grushkovo would never happen. And like I mentioned, the window of opportunities is flowing away. Every day the Ukrainians failed to start the offensive, and this Tekhino offensive, let me see, the Tekhino offensive not happening, this attack not happening is a problem for the Ukrainians. Now the window of opportunity is gone. The Ukrainians still cannot break through this western flank of the Kursk front. This pincer movement is going to stay within the realm of fiction. As we go forward, it's going to become mythological. It's not going to happen anymore. The more they drag on, and by this point, I feel like it's already never going to happen, because too much time has gone. The Ukrainians spent way too much time trying to break Komarovka, and they still can't break through. This is a disaster, the massive disaster. And as I always mention, a rigid front line in the Kursk front is going to be extremely disadvantageous for the Ukrainians, as the Russian forces now actively grind away the Ukrainian forces in these frontline regions. This is bad, very, very bad. And then we have and then the rest of the front line is very similar, pretty much largely. There's no strategic changes. The Ukrainians are still hitting the same places, like Malaya Lognia, Karinevo, Pogrebki is always the same places. And in fact, the number of places that the Ukrainians attack is actually dropping. The fighting reported in the Matinovka region, the Ruskaya Konopelka region, the Cheskaya Konopelka region, Borki, all has dropped off. There's no more fighting being reported in this region. Neskhaev also not being reported also as well. So the number of Ukrainian attacks is also falling, at least for the past 2 days. So these are all things of concern if you are pro-Ukrainian. And the continued shelling around in the Glukhiv sector continues to grind away the Ukrainian forces, particularly over at Esman, Glushkiv. These are all constantly getting shelled away, and the Ukrainian forces is going to run out of troops to launch an offensive if they continue to drag on. This offensive towards Oreo might not ever happen. That is the main thing. And then the Ukrainians is going to be stuck. For me, if I'm Ukrainian, I would just go for Transnistria. This is like the most obvious target that the Russians can't do shit about. The Ukrainians can just attack. Sorry, wrong color. Ukrainians can just attack into Transnistria, conquer Transnistria, give it to Moldova, and make it a Moldova problem. Make it a Moldova problem, and it will be interesting to watch. Since you are Ukraine, you are running out of chips, you are running out of cards. Might as well just flip the table and see how it goes. Just like the Kursk offensive. Anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next update.